What the? Nope, nope, nope. Bad touch, bad touch, bad touch! Well, it looks like we're getting ghosts for Halloween, kids.
Welcome to the Halloween episode in the vault.
Hey, let me ask you a question. What would you do if you want to get a YouTube video out for Halloween, but you have been in really poor health, and by the time you partially recover, you have absolutely no chance to make an in-depth retrospective in time for the 31st of October? That's right, it's grab bag time, baby! Yep. Rather than taking 3 months, making a 2-hour video about one game in excruciating detail, I thought we could have a more leisurely look at 3 different games of the spooky variety, with honourable mentions, definitely not for padding, and even a bonus game. We're gonna have fun, kids. So, much like in the X-Files, when Chris Carter made his best effort to plagiarise the Thing in the episode Ice.
The hell was that?
Or Breaking Bad's Isolationist episode, Fly. This is my bottle episode.
You're goddamn right.
But different isn't always bad, and hopefully I can introduce you to a game you have never heard of before. I'm pretty confident of that because, unless you are really into obscure PlayStation 1 Japanese exclusive games, you should find something new to get your teeth into. And if you have already played these games, well, just watch the fucking video anyway, will ya? You fucking Sorry. I'm still unwell and a little on edge. Being serious though for a sec, a quick thank you to everyone who subscribed to the channel. I finally got to that 1,000 sub mark, and that really cheered me up over the past few weeks. So yeah, cheers. For a little more Halloween gimmickry, we're going to categorise the games as either trick or treat. Listen, you should already know that I'm a hack by now, and if not, welcome to the channel. Where I usually go step by step through the game, this time we're going to take a more overview approach. However, I will be spoiling the games we are exploring today, so if a game pops up you would like to play, I suggest skipping it, timestamps in the description. Although, I will say, none of these games have shocking twist endings you didn't see coming, and are just as enjoyable with knowing what happens. Anyway, enough rambling. Let's power up the old PlayStation and have some good old Halloween fun, shall we? The question is, how did I pick the games we are going to play, and how did I play games in Japanese? Easy. I cheated and found games with fan translations. While I'm currently learning some Japanese, I'm in the early stages of learning katakana. Translating a whole game currently isn't, and probably never will, be in my locker, meaning we're relying on the incredibly dedicated community of fan translators and game hackers. The 3 games I picked, I did so because all these games explore different areas of horror. And that brings us to our first game. Pronounced Iru when translated from hiragana to romanji, with no easy English translation. The closest being, they're here, or it's here. Either way, something is here and it's gonna get us. This is a game absolutely covered with the fingerprints of H.P. Lovecraft. And it has that real, cut off from the rest of the world, isolationist horror feel. Information regarding the developer of Eru, Soft Machine, is quite ambiguous and hard to research, with them being an obscure Japanese company, made even harder with a 60s English rock band of the same name dominating the search results. My god, the hair! Soft Machine apparently did some side programming with other companies, so from the best I could tell, they only solely developed 11 games. These games to be exact, and Eru sticks out like a sore thumb among this backlist. As for the translation, it was handled by Snowy Area. The same Snowy Area whom also translated the game from last year's Halloween episode, Dr. Hauser. Also involved in the game hacking, Espionite, Cargodin, Blue Sky Runner, and the prolific Mr. Nobody. Right, on to the actual game. And the story sets its stall out early doors with a prologue of a young schoolgirl, Ikawa, distressed, entering a chapel in search of refuge. A voiceover, or text over, from our protagonist, Inaba, questions whether this is a premonition, and I sure hope not, because that girl just got brained. This is followed by Ikawa, warning us of an ancient evil, while mentioning we are on a small island, and then Inaba is awoken by fellow student, Yuma. Upon questioning, she tells us Ikawa is the principal's granddaughter and she transferred to a different school. Spoiler, she didn't. And we find out the students are staying late to set up for a festival. It's a clever way to give the player exposition with show, not tell, and the story is set up. Now, the first thing that really struck me about this game was its very clever use of music and sound. With the aforementioned opening starting with no music, making use of atmospheric heavy rain and thunder. Then, after our girl carelessly gets her blood all over the statue in the chapel, very inconsiderate, some very unsettling music starts to play, using high-pitched strings and a piano playing in a low octave, using a minor scale. This is then followed by a dreamlike, positive major scale piece, using a piano and mellow strings, giving that feeling of safety. Which then suddenly switches to a sinister tune, using off-tone notes giving a spooky, unsafe feeling. This may not seem like a big deal, and some may not have picked up on it consciously, but subconsciously, the game has just told you all is not well, and for the time, it's pretty damn impressive sound design. The whole game is played out in the first-person perspective through the eyes of the protagonist, and for 1998, the graphics are pretty good. The PS1 does struggle with this kind of engine due to the missing Z buffer. The line warping is particularly noticeable from this perspective, but overall, it runs well, achieving a very respectable frame rate for a fully 3D rendered game, even implementing a run ability, something sorely missing from similar games such as D, aka D's Diner, and the game we will be looking at next. And it looks very clean, definitely fitting for the horror genre. This is most prevalent in the empty hallways, darkened ceilings, and a short Silent Hill-esque draw distance, really hitting home that feeling of unease. Now, whether this is because of the system limitations or purposeful design, it really doesn't matter, because the effect is wonderful. The unease is also communicated through the characters Inaba meets in the hallway, the first being a student standing in front of the shutters. Interacting with him leads to Inaba to ask, why are the shutters closed? My guess would be because they're trying to make you feel trapped in a school without directly being told. And then, upon entering the art club, Inaba walks in a conversation between teacher Hoju-san and fellow student Mochizuki, asking what's happened to his missing brother. This would be my first point against this game being realistic. I didn't have a single teacher that looked like this in school. and you definitely wouldn't want them to wear a skirt that looks like this. Another key event is shown through the character's interactions, with fellow student Hikawa getting a little too forceful with Yuma behind his girlfriend's back, the game's way of telling us this is a bad guy and a creep. So, we are in a school where students are mysteriously going missing at night and locked in. I'm sure nothing else will happen. Well, shit. This is a signal the situation just got real. The turning point, if you will. Although, there is another example of that sound design I was talking about, with the upbeat music kicking back in, giving you a short reprieve from the exponential dread when Inaba walks in on two girls talking about him. They don't know he's eavesdropping, with Ri admitting to Kyoko she has a crush on Inaba. Well, this is all getting a little high school drama-y for my taste. But at least Inaba might get lucky if he plays his cards right. I'm sure nothing will go wrong when the lights go out. Oh, damn. Now where is Inaba gonna get some pussy? This horrific death is not the only one in Iru. In fact, it's just one of many, with the multiple characters we meet along the way succumbing to a pretty grim death. Right, we really have to get back to the themes I was talking about earlier, because this is the point where the game goes full eldritch horror. When I was younger, I was a massive Lovecraftian horror fan. So to me, each new reference to the genre was a massive plus. What are those references? Glad you asked, let's get into it. Probably, the most obvious connection comes in the form of these gruesome looking creatures that enter the school once everything has thoroughly gone tits up. Shoggoths, first appearing in H.P. Lovecraft's novella At the Mountains of Madness, is our first encounter. This is followed by the Deep Ones, first appearing in the short story Dagon, and finally, the Hounds of Tindalos. Not actually created by Lovecraft, instead first appearing in the magazine Weird Tales, written by Frank Belknap Long, and later incorporated into the wider Cthulhu mythos by August Leaf. It's not just creatures, the whole game's story is heavily drawn from the Call of Cthulhu, with all the supernatural hijinks starting at the opening of a cosmic portal. The occult, and the actual summoning of Cthulhu in the bad ending. And yes, there are alternate endings we will get into in a bit. Probably the most direct reference to this comes when making a nerve-wracking trip to the principal's office. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, the principal is now also trying to kill Inaba. In his bookcase is a copy of Robert W. Chambers' The King in Yellow, a collection of short stories connected by the cursed book titled The King in Yellow. It's very meta. Again, this is a device Lovecraft would later incorporate into his mythos. So, yeah, all that was just to say the writers of this game really loved H.P. Lovecraft. As I said, the ending is the antagonist summoning Cthulhu, using the girl from the beginning, Yuma, as a sacrifice. I say antagonist because the ending of this game is quite mystifying. Now, time to come clean. At this part of the game, I had to use a guide, not something I ever usually do, but time to make this video was running out, and the only ending I could get was the bad one. It's understandable too, because the steps to get the good ending is quite convoluted. First, you have to read this random incantation you collected on your journey, and then use the mirror, for reasons. This will summon the aforementioned Hound of Tindalos to kill the antagonist, leaving Inaba to save Yuma. The reason I'm referring to the big bad as the antagonist is because it can be one of two characters. In my playthrough, it was Hikawa, the creep from earlier, but while looking for a walkthrough, I saw this playthrough where the character summoning Cthulhu is the teacher Hoju-san. I have no idea how to get the different character, but in my playthrough, Hoju-san saved Inaba by pushing him through a shutter and then getting slaughtered by a cosmic horror, so I'm guessing the opposite of whatever I did. Sorry, that's the best I can do, as guides to this game aren't exactly flooding the internet. So, Eru. Overall, what are we thinking for our first game? My opinion upon finishing this was it's a well-made effort. The graphics are very serviceable, the sound design is excellent, and the atmosphere is great. As for the story, it really comes down to your personal taste. If you have no interest nor knowledge regarding eldritch horror, the story probably won't mean much to you. In fact, it might come across as a bit offbeat and disjointed. But if that stuff is your bag, there is a lot here to soak in. Just to be clear, I'm no Lovecraft aficionado. I have a little knowledge, but this game is so ingrained in the Cthulhu mythos. I definitely missed references others would pick up on. For instance, I'm pretty sure this picture in the art office is also a reference, but I'm not sure of what. Let me know if you do. Not all is perfect though. Eru is a walking sim, pure and simple. The puzzles are very obscure, becoming somewhat annoying to solve, and the game is very insistent everything is done in a very specific order, making the whole thing a little linear. Is Eru a little weird? No, it's a lot weird. But who doesn't love a big dose of weird in their Lovecraftian Japanese horror? For these reasons, I have no choice but to award this treat status. There is just too much atmosphere and charm here not to do so, and if you are after a little Halloween treat, I highly recommend giving Eru a try. As I only skimmed over the game here, there is still plenty for you to experience. For our second game, we are looking at another 1998 release. Something very different to Eru. R?MJ? Mystery Hospital. It's spelt like this, but you actually pronounce it MJ for reasons. Man, I'm never learning this ruddy language. Another Snowy Aria translation, again supported by the usual suspects Mr. Nobody and Esper Knight. And as always, they did an excellent job. I wasn't aware of the developer, System Seiken, but once looking into them, they have at least released some games I'm aware of. They also had a lot of experience in the horror-ish genre than Soft Machine, releasing games such as The Mansion of Hidden Souls on the Mega CD, Lunacy for the Sega Saturn, and probably their most well-known game, Deep Fear, also for the Saturn. System Seiken clearly had an affinity for FMV heavy games, and that didn't change for MJ. Now this one was never leaving the East. MJ is a very different experience to Eru, and one of those games that would have confused Western audiences, especially in the 90s. That's not a bad thing. Playing something a little different was the point of playing games that never left Japan. But is it good? Well, let's find out. The game begins with this very long intro, the definition of an exposition dump in this very flashy PowerPoint presentation. And no, it doesn't become less weird. It's like flicking through the bios of the characters in the manual. Like this is Hajime. He loves bikes and rock. This is Tomorrow, a god-tier skateboarder. Wait, is that right? Yep, god-tier skateboarder. How very 90s. Infected? Question mark? And then there's Wesker. I mean Ryo. A power is everything kind of guy. Can his lack of fear for the virus save his friends? No fear? Yeah, no fear. That will become relevant later. This is followed by slides titled things like Friend, Accident, Full Speed, ST Hospital, Explosion, Emergency, Despair. I won't read all of these. But basically Hajime, Ryo and Tomorrow are friends. The latter gets into a car accident, and Ryo and Hajime race to the hospital in their vehicles. because the best thing to do when a friend is lethally injured in a car accident is to drive recklessly to see said friend. Anyway, they are told tomorrow is fine by Nurse Aya. Then there's an explosion. Shutters come down. Yada yada yada. Long story short, Hajime, Tomorrow, Ryo and Aya are trapped in a hospital and they need to find a way out. MJ is played in the first person perspective, not the free roaming 3D rendered kind in Iru, but that awkward type of FMV first person where the controls consist of turn, walk and interact. This was very prevalent when CD media started to be integrated into games consoles. At the time, I remember the Mega CD being the biggest culprit of bringing FMV jank games into the console zeitgeist. And MJ is basically a point-and-click adventure presented in the veneer of 3D using pre-rendered video. To be fair, I was giving this game a lot of banter for telling not showing, but the rest of the game doesn't play out like that. A lot of what is going on here is told through the items found, like a newspaper, reporting the entire world is plagued by Lamia, a flu strain infecting millions. Wait, did this also come from a lab in Wuhan? An encyclopedia entry speaking of an ancient tablet recently discovered, and a copy of Penthouse. Moving on. As you would expect, most of MJ involves walking slowly through the hospital while attempting to do everything the game expects from you in a very specific order. That was par for the course in these types of games though, complete with those I know I need to go that way, but the game won't allow it yet situations. Like here, a shutter has been jammed by a gurney, leaving a large man-sized gap to fit through. But no, it's just not time to go that way yet. This is also because we need to do a dramatic coin flip. Yeah, edgy cool guy Albert Wesker standing flips a coin to decide the route we will take. Heads, Hajime and Aya investigate the director's office. Tails, and the game decides it's time to allow us through that large, man-sized gap. On my full playthrough, I got Tails, but I did a replay for this section to see what happens if getting heads, and this is when we add the final character to our team, Misato. While the coin flip thing was pretty silly, it could have added replayability using divergent paths, but no. Heads, tails, both paths converge 5 minutes later. One aspect I did like was the acting in the FMVs. I managed to find a copy of the Japanese Sega Saturn magazine with a preview of the Saturn version of MJ. In the preview, they talk about actress Riko Kobayashi. She played Nurse Aya and talks about the process of doing the motion capture for the FMVs. While motion capture was far from new when MJ was made, it was far from common, and it helps with really capturing that B-movie, campy horror feel, because this game is very campy, and that's my favourite part. I mean, just look how wonderfully weird this is.
どうしたの？ラミアにやられちゃったよ。なんてね。変な冗談はやめて。ラミアに感染したらとっくに死んでいるわ。
And oh yeah, Tomorrow is now infected with the virus. Nothing a little shot of vaccine can't fix. But that does bring me to an issue I had with MJ's storyline, the messy implementation of the virus. When it comes to virus-based horror, it's usually a subgenre that comes under the moniker of body horror, almost always employing some sort of zombie or The Last of Us-esque infected human. But here, there's no monsters, just the silent threat of the virus, visualised by the VL monitor. Problem is, at no point while I was playing did anything happen. Apparently, if you hang around in high-risk areas, it will lead to a game over due to infection, but that never naturally occurred for me. The thing is, the atmosphere is actually quite good. The music is creepy and suspenseful, and the hospital setting is unsettling. Every now and then we get a cutscene of a shadowy figure following our protagonists, and the change of scene is seen through the monitor of CCTV. Yeah, we're being watched, And as my parole officer keeps telling me, watching unaware people from a distance is creepy and weird. Unfortunately, this is completely undercut by the lack of any danger. There is a lot of implied threat, but with no enemies, it's a complete red herring. The game even tells us so, with this no fear message constantly popping up at the bottom of the screen. Yeah, no shit. No fear seems to be more of a description of this game rather than an indication of your current fear levels. All that is true. That is until the late game. The thing is with MJ, it doesn't know what it wants to be. We start with a fairly atmospheric, trapped in a hospital under the threat of infection narrative. But upon inserting the second of 2 discs, yep, this 1 hour and 45 minute game needed 2 discs. The story turns into, well... I'm going to be candid. I struggled to understand what the story turns into. Whether it be a lost in translation thing, a me being retarded thing, or simply bad writing, I really struggled to fully grasp the endgame. What I do understand is the crew is now captured by a generically evil, old bearded dude. Apparently his motive is to create the ultimate vaccine to cure any disease. He infected the world with a special strain of influenza and is using the hospital as a front to find what he calls MJ, an ancient genetic antibody that he has narrowed down to our 5 protagonists. His plan is, once the vaccine is created, he will sell it to become the richest man in the world. Got it? No, me neither. Oh, by the way, Ryo is a clone. Or a plant. Again, the game isn't clear. And also, this involves a mummy, generic old guy found in the ancient ruins under the hospital. Honestly, the story doesn't get any better. So, I will surmise from what I understand. Out of the 5 main characters, Hajime ends up being the only one with MJ in his system, while the others become infected while being tested on. Infected with what, you ask? Don't know. He creates more vaccine, reverses the effects of the virus on Aya, and then the rest of the crew. The old man gets double-crossed by his henchman, shooting him in the back for the vaccine, who in turn also gets killed. Then, we escape on a train. One thing I did love was his henchman being voiced in English.
Boss, I got converted. We must go now.
I'm guessing, to Japanese players, this is supposedly to make him seem foreign, but this guy is not a native English speaker, so it sounds very strange. This is the kind of weirdness I was hoping for from a Japanese language game. I am really breezing through the end game, because none of it makes the story more coherent. Finally though, escape is within our reach, riding the train to safety, but then we get introduced to the final boss. Oh my god, it's... I say final boss, but in line with the rest of the game, the correct vaccine simply needs to be selected, and Pepsi Man is no more. Sorry if that final section became a little convoluted and confusing, but that's exactly how I felt when playing the game. The most regrettable aspect of this game is the potential left on the table. The idea of a horror game where the enemy is an invisible, silent foe is an interesting concept. Unfortunately, MJ fumbles the ball. I don't want to get caught up in the specifics of the story, but by the end, MJ's plot has more holes than the sea sponge and collapses under the smallest amount of scrutiny. It's a shame. Because we have the perfect spooky soundtrack, very entertaining acting, and when being judged on being pure B-movie jank, you can get away with a silly storyline. MJ definitely has all the hallmarks of it's good because it's bad, The Room type legacy. But as soon as the story begins to take itself way too seriously, the fun aspects fade away, leaving you asking, what the fuck was that? Unfortunately, that thoroughly makes this a Halloween trick. I feel tricked, and MJ is getting its house TP'd tonight. But fair play, MJ. You had a story about a virus, and resisted the urge to copy a certain game involving a zombie-filled mansion that we are not mentioning at all today. Maximum respect. Before we get into our last game, I just wanted to quickly showcase a few PS1 fan translations that are definitely worth a look. FYI, these honourable mentions will be spoiler free, so no need to worry. First up, we have Yaku Yujon Denji, a title that roughly translates to the misfortunes of friendship, although it can be translated in different ways. Released in 1996, Yaku Yujon Danji is an interactive, visual novel revolving around 5 friends making the ill-fated decision to recover a time capsule they buried years ago from their old school, long since abandoned. In the first playthrough, you can switch between the 2 kids during the game, taking different paths depending on your decisions. Unlike most games, the characters you choose does not lock you into their story, with the game asking you which story you would like to advance at short intervals. The art style for this game is very unsettling, with the main characters having zombie-like appearances, making them just as visually disturbing as the enemies you will face on your journey. The soundtrack defies any kind of traditional music theory, and when paired with the amateur CGI, it makes for quite the troubling experience. With the aforementioned multiple endings, different paths, and 3 unlockable characters, Yaku Yujon Danji has a fair amount of replayability. If you can take a second playthrough, that is, because it really is quite disconcerting. It leans into multiple different horror tropes, probably the most prolific being body horror. But there's a lot of subtext in this very short experience. Allegedly, there was an English translation planned by Northwood Interactive, but due to the dark themes and unsettling aesthetic, it was cancelled, apparently being judged unsuitable for Western audiences, because we're all pussies, don't you know. Yaku Yujon Danji is a game the Japanese categorise as kusoji, a more eloquent way of saying shit game. Probably a title that could also be applied to MJ. Although this was originally panned critically, it has gone on to have a cult classic status. When playing a single character story, this is an incredibly short game, around half an hour, but the intention is to play all 5 characters, exploring the different paths. And in that context, it's well worthy of a playthrough during spooky season. Second tip of the hat goes to Germs Nerawalata Machi, or Germs the Targeted Town in English. An open world first person action horror game that I can only describe as alternate horror. You play as an unnamed reporter returning to his unnamed hometown. Upon checking his email, the player character comes across a disconcerting message from an old friend, Hiroshi Fujita, explaining strange happenings at the nuclear plant, as well as a message from the forest ranger explaining the sightings of a strange light coming from the mountains. Mutants are among us, and through the missions given by phone, email, and talking to NPCs, the story develops with the protagonist needing to stop the mutated humans. There is nothing normal about Germs. Not only was it quite ahead of its time, being a very early open world system, it also allows the player to drive a car and explore missions in whatever way they wish. Above all, it's the style of which Germs is made that stands out so much. The surrealism is very reminiscent and probably influenced by the movies of David Lynch, and highly stylized with a monochrome overworld, very unsettling script writing, and the creepiest looking NPCs, some having low poly facial features and some being entirely faceless. While nowhere near as weird in comparison to modern games, Germs reminds me of a dialed-back version of Cruelty Squad. Not so much in look, but more in the surreal, creepy atmosphere. Definitely worth a play, although an interesting fact is this game was printed on poor quality CDs, so due to rarity, this is now a 7,000 quid game for a disc that will soon be unusable. Time to put on your eye patch and your tricorn hat. Arrgh! And finally, the game I really wanted to play as one of the 3 main titles in this episode, Mazerna Falls. Problem is, it's a 16 to 20 hour game on a blind playthrough, a length that would require its own episode to do it justice, but well worth an honourable mention. Now, this would have been better titled Twin Peaks the Game, as the connections are strong with this one. Mazerna Falls takes place in the Rocky Mountains, where Kathy Flannery, a local young girl, is found in a forest, unconscious, displaying claw marks. Following her death, on Christmas Day, one of her classmates, Emma Rowland, also goes missing, with the player character and also fellow classmate Matthew Williams investigating, leading to a 7-day race against time to solve the mystery before the turn of the new year. Dark secrets are buried deep within this small town of Mazerna Falls, and it's up to you to uncover the mystery and save Emma in time. Honestly, I had a great time with this one. It wasn't a very well received title in 1998, but I believe this game was the definition of before its time, like Shenmue before Shenmue. Exploration is entirely up to the player, and you only uncover the clues you actively look for, with no hand-holding. I would usually get frustrated with games like Mazerna Falls, because without a guide, you will be playing this multiple times to beat the ticking clock. But I found myself intrigued with the mystery, wanting to reveal more of the story. Can it be frustrating? Absolutely, especially as some of the beats in the story require being in the right place at the right time. With 3 different endings, the game encourages you to see all the events to get the best one, because there is no better incentive to replay a game than getting the bad ending. As I said, I'm a sucker for this one as a fan of Twin Peaks, and obviously this is another Lynchian-inspired game due to the links to the 1990s mystery horror drama. Mazerna Falls was developed by Human Entertainment of Clock Tower fame, and while maybe not pure horror per se, unlike Clock Tower, there's no jump scares, body horror, nor gore, but a murder mystery is close enough for me. Plus, I really wanted to talk about it, and this is my show, so I'm steering the ship today. On to our last game of this spooky evening, or morning, or afternoon, whenever you're watching. And the bonus I was talking about earlier is this isn't 1 game, but 2. So the game I was talking about is Echo Night. Now the astute among you will be saying, hang on, Echo Night was released in North America, and yes, you are right, but you know what wasn't? Its sequel, Echo Night 2, The Lord of Nightmares. And it just so happens, translator Tom and game hacker Gemini, the legends that they are, have fully translated it for us. To be honest, while the games share elements, they are both on different timelines. But I thought we could do a short run through of the first game and then go a little deeper into the second. Because who doesn't want a little more Wranker, am I right? That was rhetorical, no need to post your opinions of me in the comments. As the chapter title suggests, yes, this is a Fromsoft game, and for those of you living under a rock, Fromsoft are the mega successful Japanese developer behind Armored Core, Sekiro, and of course the Dark Souls series. You know what? If you have never played the Souls games, turn this off right now. I'll take a hit on the views. And play Bloodborne, Dark Souls 1, 3, and Elden Ring. But not Dark Souls 2. Never Dark Souls 2. Am I doing the meme right? I'm sure 100% of you watching this video are aware of Fromsoft, but something not everyone is aware of is their history before those titans. Prior to making ridiculously unfair gothic masterpieces, they were making games like King's Field and our featured game, Echo Knight, both implementing a very similar game engine. Much like Fromsoft's most popular early series, Armored Core, King's Field is not a hidden gem. It's a well-known beloved series, but I had never heard of Echo Knight before, and I'm glad I have now, as it's such an interesting series. The first Echo Knight starts out with the player character, Richard Osmond, receiving a letter from his estranged father, Henry. The envelope contained a key, followed by a phone call from the police wanting to ask questions regarding Henry's disappearance. Escorted by the police, Richard goes to investigate his father's burnt-down house. Upon searching the house, Richard finds a painting of an ocean liner and is mystically transported across time and space to 1913, putting him aboard the Orpheus, the ship in the painting. Once appearing on the ship, we are greeted by a shadowy figure, not a ghost, but not a person, an apparition of a past time, and it's through these characters the story is revealed. The game loop being: find one of these figures, find out their unfinished business, finish their business, and then set them free. This will give you an astral piece, and sometimes a key item to advance the story. Not all on this ship is friendly though, which brings us to the ghosts, the first of which is made even creepier by her being a little girl. These malevolent spirits are the main threat in Echo Knight. They will appear in the darkness and throw Richard around like a piece of chicken, or send in smaller spirits to attack. It's a good idea, making the game feel quite oppressive and tense. Any dark room you enter could lead to an attack, with your only weapon being light. Yeah, the horror is slightly undercut by only needing to turn on the light. This is occasionally offset by things like broken light switches or needing to replace a fuse, and it's a system Fromsoft massively improved upon in the sequel. Impressively, there is also a day and night cycle. Not helpful in the cabins, but stops ghosts from attacking when on deck. Still, a good idea to turn the lights on though. The darkness of night will return. While the puzzles can be a little obtuse, as you might be able to tell by now with these 3 games, that was par for the course for 1998. One thing that isn't obtuse though is the story. In fact, I would say it's the polar opposite of MJ. It's interesting, it makes sense, and it's a nice take on the genre. Nautical horror and mystery has always been a source of intrigue. From the legend of Davy Jones sailing the Flying Dutchman for all eternity, to real-life maritime mystery of the Mary Celeste, the isolationist nature of the ocean has always been a great setting for horror storytelling. Put a boat in the middle of the ocean, chuck a few ghosts on there, job done, right? Well, not quite. What I love about Echo Knight was learning what happened here through helping the prior residents. Not all these interactions lead to interesting story developments. Some are just resolving personal unfinished business. Best described as fetch quests. I know, a dirty word, but with the way it's implemented, these sections never feel like a chore. My favourite type of this mission is when Richard is transported to the past to bring necessary items back to the present. I really don't want to go too deep into the story of Echo Knight. It was a game released in the West and had a full official translation. Plus, as it's only a side stop in this video, I don't want to spoil Echo Knight, as I seriously advise you give it a go. So, with all that being said, it's on to the final game in our Trick or Treat Spooktacular. The second iteration of the Echo Knight series was released the following year, and as mentioned, it never got an English language release. I couldn't find sales figures for the first game, but I can only imagine Echo Knight sold massively more copies in Japan, because otherwise I have no idea why this never got a Western release, as it surpasses the original in every way. Full title, Echo Knight 2, The Lord of Nightmares. Although a more accurate translation would be The Ruler of Sleep, but the translation group found The Lord of Nightmares to be a more appropriate interpretation, and I tend to agree. It's a game that, while not making many changes, instead just tweaking everything to make the final product a much better game. The reason I didn't talk about the sound design and graphical presentation in the first game is because nothing changes in the second. When you nail something the first time you do it, why change anything the next? And that's the philosophy Fromsoft seem to go with here. The sound design is wonderful, understated, but perfect for the kind of game Echo Knight is. There isn't much actual music here, save for a few key moments, but when they do use music, it's done to improve the scene it's played in. Usually, this will come down to some melancholic pieces to enhance that feeling of dread, but sometimes it can be a fast-paced piece to install the feeling of urgency. Or occasionally, it's a sad piano arrangement to ensure the player knows this is indeed a sad event. Obviously, the music is only a small piece of the sound design in the game, and the use of the droning footsteps of the player cleverly dampening or echoing depending on the floor being walked upon. Obnoxiously squeaking doors when entering a new room, or the alien feel of the Japanese voice acting, all enhances the experience.
そろそろ餌をやらなくちゃ。ちょっと取ってくれない?
Now that last one wouldn't be intentional or even relevant for Japanese speakers, but for me, it just adds that extra layer of disconnection from reality. In fact, if this game was released with English voiceovers, I would still rather play the Japanese version. As for the visual style of the two games, while I'm not going to argue the graphics were cutting edge for the time, they weren't. But much like with Iru, the visuals add to the atmosphere and are totally stylistically appropriate. Where both games really do shine is the detail amongst the blocky graphics. Time was clearly spent making rooms look like a ship's bridge, a large dining room, a mansion's parlour, or a well-furnished study. Remembering all this was fully 3D rendered, running at a great frame rate goes a long way to excusing the wobbly walls and poor quality decals. One area where Echo Knight 2 certainly improved upon the original is the sheer scale of the game. While being trapped on an ocean liner is a great setting for horror, exploring a big ghost-filled manor, as we do in Echo Knight 2, makes for a much grander adventure. Not only that, we get a small boat, allowing us to explore several different locations, giving the game far more variety. Although this game mainly takes place in the manor, that isn't where it begins. Like the first game, we start with an investigation. Again, the protagonist is named Richard Osmond, the only big link between the two games. And this time, he is in search of his missing girlfriend, Christina Collins. I believe this isn't the same character from the first game, only sharing a name. But I will say, if your missus goes missing and you only start looking for her 3 months later, you just might not be that into her. Christina was last seen entering the library of the university she attends. Upon investigating, Richard finds the last book she checked out, with a picture of a woman that appears to be her double, Jessica Clancy. Learning Jessica's family owns a large estate, and knowing Christina was desperate for answers about her forgotten origins, Richard sets off to investigate the manor. I know, that's a razor-thin plot device, but as I have said in previous videos, I don't give storylines in video games the same levels of scrutiny as other media, such as books, TV, or movies, so I'm fine with it. While driving to the Clancy estate, Richard is knocked off the road by a falling tree. Next thing he knows, after regaining consciousness, he is laying in a bedroom. One way or another, Richard made it to the manor, and standing next to us is Brian Node. He saved Richard from the wreckage. He doesn't live here, he is just lost, taking refuge. Convenient. You don't need to take too much note of him. Brian is just here to show us the lighting mechanic, and how dangerous malevolent spirits are, getting killed shortly after meeting.
ここにもか。ちくしょう、なんで開かないんだ。来た時はちゃんと開いたはずだ。
There's a lot this game does better than its predecessor, but one of the biggest things is the lighting system. Just like the first game, there's no weapons here. Your only defense against the evil ghost is turning on the lights. Whereas in Echo Night it was massively gimped by the ready availability of light sources, here things aren't that simple. And this is due to the introduction of distribution boards. To get this board working, the key must be found, and until they are activated, the light switches will not work, leaving the ghosties to attack at any time. It's a great system to limit the effectiveness of your weapons, the most extreme example of de-emphasized combat I've seen. It requires planning, as when going to a new area, the key will have to be removed from the old board and inserted in the distribution board of the new area being explored. In the endgame, you do eventually find the master board, lighting up the whole mansion. But this requires the only 2 keys found to be used at the same time, and remembering where you left said keys can be a headache. I know because I had no idea what distribution board I left the second key in. As the story unfolds, an interesting narrative reveals itself. Interesting, but quite involved, so I will summarise the best I can in the interest of time. Jessica, the woman from the book whom is terminally ill, is the identical sister of Richard's girlfriend, Christina, real name Rebecca Morgan. It's explained in this excellent cutscene during a flashback that she is aboard a Hindenburg-type airship. One of the engines caught fire, and this blimp was definitely not filled with helium.
Anna, no! You'll kill us all!
Oh, for the last time, you idiot! It's not hydrogen! It's helium!
Aboard was 3-year-old Rebecca and her parents, with Jessica being too ill to travel. While all 3 were declared dead with no bodies being found, Rebecca actually survived, being washed up on a beach with amnesia. She was taken to an orphanage and rehomed with no memory of where she came from. Jessica, on the other hand, was taken in by her wealthy grandparents. At age 22, she married Albert Clancy, whom found an artifact called the Soul Stone on the grounds of the manor along with a mummified woman. That woman's sister is only referred to as the red-haired woman. She pops up throughout the game, occasionally pushing the plot forward. A trope in storytelling known as Mr. Exposition, or Mrs. Exposition here I suppose. She was granted immortality when she killed her sister with the Soul Stone. The main antagonist, Albert, upon researching, believes the Soul Stone can save his wife if he murders others with it, much like how the red-haired woman got her immortality. He is gradually driven mad in this mission. Upon his wife's doppelganger just wandering into the manor, Albert is convinced to perform the ritual one more time during the night of the Crimson Moon by the red-haired woman. Again, this is a game with multiple endings. Some sources cite up to 5 different conclusions based on your actions throughout the game. I honestly didn't have time to play Echo Knight 2 5 times, but apparently I got the good ending. Richard reaches Christina in time and Albert is killed by the red-haired woman. It seems her immortality has become a curse, not a gift, and she uses the situation to finally release herself from said curse. At the end, Richard is given the option to acquire the Soul Stone. He rejects it, and the stone destroys itself, along with the red-haired woman, to her approval. Jessica stays at the manor after her illness subsides, but remains in close contact with Richard and Christina. Now, I want to be totally clear. This is a very loose interpretation of the story, mainly done so you can play this for yourself. But also because the story of this game is bananas.
You can call me Nannerpuss, and guess what? I love Venus.
There are so many holes to fill in to a point I had to rewatch my playthrough and even read this Q&A to answer some of my questions. Like I had no idea how Christina/Rebecca survived the aircraft crash, but apparently people smarter than me had the answers. The great aspect of this story is how it links in with the Lost Souls this time round. Much like the first game, Echo Knight 2 has the same system of saving these blackened out spirits, completing their unfinished business and receiving an astral piece. These side quests are far more in line with the main storyline, with a lot of the people being killed by Albert in an attempt to save Jessica. These sections feel far more like advancing the story rather than performing side quests, which makes all the difference. I'm sure it's not a secret by now, I really enjoyed this game. Can it be a little overcomplicated at times? Most definitely, but it's the amount of backstory and narrative they fit into a 5.5-hour game I found impressive. For me, it feels like Fromsoft found the perfect setting for the gameplay mechanics they set out in the first game. At the end of the day, Fromsoft, in a time where developers were more concerned with pushing the hardware to its polygonal limit, it seemed they were taking lessons from the past and putting their stock in making an intriguing title, rather than working on all the bells and whistles. All I can suggest is you give both the PS1 Echo Knight games a try. This one is most definitely a Halloween treat, rounding off the episode nicely. So, 7 games, 6 never released in the West. And what did we learn? Well, the Japanese get some awesome games that I've never heard of. I know, not exactly breaking news, but remember, this video had a limited scope of PlayStation 1 horror titles. How many more lay in obscurity and how many of them haven't been translated by the wonderful hacking community? Probably more than I will ever know. But that just means there is plenty more to explore. I know there is at least one translation in the works I am keeping my eye on personally. Twilight Syndrome, which has already been partially translated. Honestly though, the guys and gals who translate these games for nothing but the love of the game deserve a lot of kudos. All credits to the translators will be in the description with links for the patch files and a guide to how to use them so you can try these great games out for yourself. As for the games we covered today, it was quite an eclectic group, all very different in execution. Not all games are built equal, but these titles all have their own charm and interesting aspects. From the 3 main games, if I were to rank them worst to best, it would be MJ, Eru, then Echo Knight. But this will come down to personal taste, depending on what you're looking for. If you love the Lovecraftian mythos, then Eru is for you. Love cheesy B-movie madness? Try MJ. Or, after something with a little more to sink your teeth into, then Echo Knight is your man. As I said though, they are all interesting, and if you can carve out just a little time, pun intended, then I would suggest giving them all a try. Anyway, that's it for our grab bag, variety show, sampler, whatever you want to call it. And this was a little more experimental to what I usually do. More of a casual hang with a fellow retro game enthusiast, rather than an extensive deep dive. I have some ideas for an episode using this format in future, so let me know what you liked, what you would like to see improved, and anything else you would like to say about the episode. Especially if you know of any interesting fan translations in the works, let me know. Finally, if you like what you see, check out the channel if new here. I put a lot of time into my videos and I would love for more to see them. Right, that's your lot. Have a spooky Halloween, everyone. And with all that being said, be good, stay safe, and I will see you next time.